The USS Vanguard cut through the stillness of uncharted space, its sleek frame reflecting the distant, dying light of far-off stars. The ship was the latest in human exploration technology, designed for one purpose: to uncover the mysteries of the universe. Aboard it was a team of scientists, engineers, and historians, all eager to uncover ancient secrets from long-lost civilizations. They had been traveling for weeks, scanning various systems, cataloging stars and planets, but nothing had prepared them for what they found one cold, quiet day. The first hint of something unusual came in the form of a faint signal, a weak. It wasn't coming from any known source, and it wasn't anything they had encountered in their previous scans. Captain Sarah Cole, ever cautious but driven by curiosity, gave the order to investigate. The crew navigated the Vanguard toward the coordinates, which led them to a vast, desolate region of space. Here, there was no star, no planet, just a chilling emptiness. It was as though the very fabric of space itself was void of life. But as they moved deeper into the anomaly, a terrifying sight began to emerge: a vast graveyard stretching across light years, filled with the shattered remnants of alien ships, derelict structures, and skeletal remains of once great civilizations. It was a haunting sight. Massive ships, each unlike anything humanity had ever seen, were scattered across the void, their once glorious forms reduced to twisted metal and shattered glass. Some were huge, with jagged, angular designs that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Others were smaller, but still massive by human standards, each wrecked and abandoned as though a cataclysm had torn through them. No communication signals came from the wreckage, and no life signs appeared on their scanners. It was as if the entire area had been deserted for eons, with no trace of its creators remaining. The eerie silence of the graveyard hung in the air like a heavy fog. Captain Cole stood at the helm, her eyes fixed on the view screen as she took in the monumental sight before them. "Prepare for a closer scan," she ordered. The crew, although anxious, knew that this was the chance of a lifetime. They had stumbled upon a forgotten corner of the universe, a place where an ancient civilization had once flourished and then vanished without a trace. It was a discovery that could change the course of human history. As the Vanguard moved closer, the enormity of the ruins began to sink in. The debris field was so vast that it seemed endless, with no beginning and no end. Some ships appeared to have been torn apart from the inside, while others looked like they had been blasted apart by some unimaginable force. It was as if a great battle had taken place here, one that had wiped out the inhabitants of this ancient civilization in an instant. The question that haunted the crew was simple: what had happened here? What had caused such destruction? The answer came when they found the first intact structure. It was a ship, massive, dark, and almost otherworldly in its design. It had been spared from total destruction, though it was clear that something had caused catastrophic damage to its systems. The crew carefully boarded the ship, their footsteps echoing through the empty corridors as they explored its darkened interior. Strange, alien symbols covered the walls, and the air felt thick with the weight of centuries of silence. It was a place frozen in time, with no trace of the beings who had once called it home. As you moved deeper into the ship, Dr. Liara Jensen, the lead archaeologist, discovered something strange: a pulsating light coming from a chamber at the heart of the vessel. The crew gathered around, their curiosity piqued. Inside the chamber lay a strange object, unlike anything they had ever encountered. It was a crystal, but not a crystal like any known on Earth. This one seemed to hum with an otherworldly energy, its surface shifting and glowing with an eerie, unnatural light. The crew felt an unsettling sense of awe as they approached it, as though the very air around them had changed. The artifact was mesmerizing, and yet something deep within their instincts warned them not to touch it. The energy emanating from it was palpable, almost as though it were alive. Captain Cole hesitated, but the temptation of discovery was too great. Ignoring the warnings, she ordered the retrieval of the crystal. Dr. Jensen carefully placed the artifact into a containment unit, but as soon as it was touched, something strange began to happen. The ship's systems flickered, then began to fail one by one. The lights dimmed, and strange noises echoed through the walls. The crew felt a sudden pressure in their heads, as if an unseen force were bearing down on them. At first, they thought it was simply a malfunction, a result of the ship's ancient systems reacting to the artifact. But as they returned to the Vanguard and began their journey back to their home base, the situation grew far worse. The crew began to experience strange visions, flashes of alien landscapes, flashes of monstrous beings that appeared in their dreams, and fleeting glimpses of unknown technologies. The artifact's presence seemed to be affecting their minds, pulling them into a mysterious, trance-like state. Captain Cole ordered the crew to conduct a full analysis of the crystal. Dr. Jensen and the rest of the scientific team worked tirelessly to decipher its properties. They discovered that the artifact was far more than just an ancient relic. It was a key to something far more powerful than anything the crew had anticipated. The crystal was not just an object of curiosity. It was a link to an ancient, long-forgotten force, one that had lain dormant for eons, waiting to be awakened. But what they hadn't realized was that their actions had already set something in motion. The moment the artifact was removed from its resting place, it began to broadcast a signal that reached deep into the heart of the void, where the remnants of the ancient alien race lay dormant. And now, something was stirring. Something old. Something powerful. Something that had been waiting for the right moment to rise once more. The crew of the USS Vanguard had unwittingly triggered a chain of events that would lead them down a path they could not return from. They had found the graveyard of an ancient civilization, and in doing so, had awakened something that should have remained forgotten. Now, the question remained, what would they do next? Would they be able to survive the consequences of their actions, or would they fall victim to the very force they had unleashed? After the crystal was removed from its resting place in the depths of the alien ship, something began to stir. At first, the crew didn't notice the small, unsettling changes. The USS Vanguard sailed through space, leaving the ruins of the alien graveyard behind them. But beneath the calm exterior, something was wrong. The ship's systems started to glitch. Small, almost unnoticeable malfunctions occurred, a flickering light here, a brief drop in power there. Nothing too alarming at first, but enough to raise concerns among the crew. However, what followed was far more disturbing. Captain Sarah Cole sat in her command chair, staring at the console in front of her, when a sudden jolt made the ship tremble. The ship's lights flickered, casting long shadows across the bridge, and the comm systems let out a low, unsettling hum. A sharp, high-pitched noise filled the room, distorting all communication channels. Crew members exchanged nervous glances as static filled the speakers, and the ship's systems struggled to stabilize. The usual hum of the Vanguard's engines, steady and reliable, now seemed strained, almost as if something was pushing back against them. The crew tried to make sense of it, but every time they thought they had found the issue, the problems only grew worse. Then, the dreams began. At first, it was subtle, just odd, fragmented images. But soon, the dreams turned vivid, disturbing, and impossible to shake. Each crew member had them, no matter how far apart they were on the ship. Captain Cole dreamt of endless voids, endless stretches of darkness, where something ancient and unknowable whispered in the back of her mind. Dr. Liara Jensen, the archaeologist who had first touched the crystal, saw fleeting glimpses of alien cities in ruins, but their destruction felt personal, as if the devastation was directed at her. Some crew members saw glowing figures, beings of light and shadow that loomed above them, watching, waiting. None of the dreams made sense, but all felt inescapable, as though they were being pulled into a story long written but never understood. Dr. Jensen, unable to ignore the connection between the artifact and the strange occurrences aboard the ship, focused all her attention on studying the crystal. She began to feel a strange pull towards it, a magnetic force that made it impossible to ignore. Day and night, she worked tirelessly, running test after test, trying to unlock its secrets. As she examined the crystal more closely, a terrifying realization dawned upon her. The artifact was not just some ancient relic. It was a key to something far larger, something that had once controlled the galaxy. The truth began to unravel slowly. The crystal's energy signature was like nothing the crew had ever encountered, far beyond the scope of any technology known to mankind. After piecing together fragments of alien data from the ships in the graveyard, Dr. Jensen uncovered something chilling. The crystal was the central component of an ancient weapon, one so powerful it had the capability to annihilate entire civilizations. But more than that, it had been used for just that purpose, destroying entire empires across the stars. The weapon had been dormant for eons, and for a reason, it was a force too dangerous to be allowed to exist. Jensen's discovery hit the crew like a cold wave. They had unwittingly become entangled with a force far beyond their understanding. It wasn't just a relic from a lost civilization, it was a tool of unimaginable destruction. The artifact, they realized, had been left behind, buried in the ruins, abandoned to avoid the consequences of its power. And now, they had disturbed it.ase. The weight of this revelation settled over the crew. The disturbances only intensified. The air on the Vanguard grew heavy, charged with a strange, oppressive energy. The strange figures from the crew's dreams began to manifest on the ship, but this time, they were not confined to sleep. These entities were made of shadows and light, their forms shifting and shifting again, impossible to grasp with the human eye. They would appear suddenly, flickering in and out of existence, always just out of reach, but always watching. The crew could feel them in the corners of their vision, hear them whispering in voices that did not belong to any known language. No one could explain what they were. They weren't ghosts, at least not in any traditional sense. They were something older, something bound to the crystal itself. They were the remnants of the civilization that had once wielded the weapon. Their minds, their consciousness, had merged with the artifact, and they were furious at the intrusion. The beings were not physical, not fully alive, yet not entirely dead either. Their existence was bound to the crystal, and now that it had been disturbed, they were waking. At first, the crew tried to rationalize what was happening. They thought it might be a trick of the mind, a psychological side effect of exposure to such a powerful artifact. But as the days went on, the manifestations became more intense. Crew members began to lose their focus, becoming distracted, their thoughts clouded by strange visions. The ship's systems were growing more erratic, more difficult to control. It was as if the Vanguard was no longer entirely under their control. It felt like something was pushing against them, something that didn't want them to leave. Captain Cole knew they were no longer alone in the cold vastness of space. The crew was being watched. The alien entities weren't just manifestations of fear or hallucinations. They were intelligent, aware, and increasingly hostile. The deeper the crew delved into the mystery of the artifact, the more aggressive the beings became. The entity that seemed to appear the most was the largest, an enormous, shadowy figure, almost humanoid in shape, but twisting, shifting, and constantly moving in and out of focus. It would appear at the edges of the crew's vision, its glowing eyes always fixed on them, always watching. Every time it appeared, the ship would experience another glitch, another system failure. With no clear answers, Dr. Jensen and Captain Cole discussed their next steps. They knew the crystal had to be destroyed before it could awaken something far worse, but how could they destroy a force so ancient and powerful? What if they weren't even capable of understanding the full scope of its power? But the entities weren't giving them any choice. They had made it clear the Vanguard was not welcome here. The ship's fate, it seemed, was now intertwined with the crystal and the weapon it had unlocked. What had begun as an exploration mission had now turned into a desperate battle for survival as the crew faced the terrifying reality that they had unleashed something far beyond their control. The atmosphere aboard the USS Vanguard had become suffocating, every corner of the ship tinged with the ominous presence of something far older than humanity. The crew, already on edge, had felt that their unease was no longer just from the glitches in the systems or the strange dreams. Something had changed. And then it happened. It began with a strange hum, a deep vibration that seemed to pulse through the very walls of the ship. The lights flickered, dimming, and then a cold rush of air swept across the bridge. The crew braced themselves, unsure of what was coming, but all of them felt that something was approaching. It wasn't the typical threat they had trained for in deep space. This felt wrong, something ancient and unfathomable. Then it appeared. From the center of the bridge, a figure materialized. It was unlike any alien the crew had ever seen, tall, towering, its form partially composed of shadows that seemed to warp and shift with every passing second. Its skin was an ethereal, translucent substance, but its eyes, those eyes burned with a fiery intensity that cut through the darkness, glowing like stars in the deep of space. Its presence was overwhelming, the very air around it thick with a strange energy, as though the ship itself had lost some of its control in its presence. Captain Cole froze, her breath catching in her throat. She was no stranger to first contact, but this was different. This was something older, a power that reached back beyond the knowledge of humanity. The figure's mouth parted, and from its throat came a deep, resonating voice, an ancient language that rippled through the air like thunder. The crew stared, trying to make sense of the sounds, but their translator system could make no sense of the words. It was a language lost to time, and yet there was something undeniably powerful about it, a power that transcended mere speech. The alien raised a hand, and the whispers ceased. For a moment, the crew stood in silence, every heartbeat louder than the last. The alien's voice, now calm and resonant, echoed through the bridge once more, this time in broken English, as if the being struggled to communicate with them. "You have awakened what was meant to remain asleep," it said. "The key. It is not just an artifact. It is a beacon." Captain Cole stepped forward, her mind racing. "A beacon? To what?" she asked, her voice steady but laced with tension. The alien's eyes narrowed, glowing brighter with intensity. "To the Guardians. To the weapon. To the end of all you know." The words were heavy, each one carrying a weight that settled on the crew like a leaden shroud. The figure's form flickered again, the shadows dancing across its body like an old memory that refused to fade. "You do not understand the weapon you have uncovered. It was not a tool of conquest. It was a tool of erasure. A force so powerful it destroyed my empire, my people, and my world. We created it, thinking it would preserve us, but it turned against us." The crew exchanged uneasy glances, the implications of the alien's words sinking in like a cold, icy grip around their hearts. The weapon had not been designed to conquer, it was designed to erase, to obliterate entire civilizations. And now, the crew of the Vanguard had unlocked it. What had they done? The alien's form seemed to shimmer with a sense of sadness, the weight of centuries of pain hanging in the air. The weapon. It cannot be controlled. Not by any living being. It is bound to the artifact, and the artifact is now calling for its guardians. The figure paused, its glowing eyes piercing through each of the crew members, as if it could see into the very depths of their souls. The guardians are machines, ancient constructs, programmed to prevent the weapon's power from ever being unleashed again. They patrol the galaxy, hunting for any sign of its activation. And now that you have awakened the beacon, they are coming. A chill ran down the crew's spines. The weight of the alien's words pressed down on them like a storm about to break. The Guardians were not just some ancient relics, they were a force designed to protect the weapon, to ensure that its power would never fall into the wrong hands. And now, the Vanguard had become the signal that would draw them out of the far reaches of space, like a dark cloud gathering on the horizon. The alien turned its gaze on Captain Cole, its voice low and grave. "You have no choice now. You cannot undo what you have done. The Guardians will find you. They will find this ship, and they will destroy it. Destroy all of you." But the figure paused, a strange flicker of something like pity crossing its features. "You can leave. You can turn back. Go back to your people and forget this place. Leave the artifact, and I will ensure the Guardians do not destroy you." The alien's offer was one of mercy, a chance to escape the consequences of their actions. But there was no hiding the truth in its eyes. This was not just a warning, it was a test. Captain Cole stood still, her mind racing. The temptation to abandon the mission. But there was something else tugging at her, a pull, a need to understand, to unravel the mystery of what had happened here. The rest of the crew watched her closely, waiting for her decision. The alien had offered them a chance to turn away, but at what cost? Would they walk away from the most significant discovery in human history, or would they risk everything to learn the truth? The captain's gaze hardened. She had never been one to back down from a challenge, and the allure of the unknown was too great to ignore. "We can't turn back now," she said, her voice firm, the weight of the decision settling heavily in her chest. "We've come too far. We need to know what happened here. We need to understand the weapon, and we need to stop it before it's too late." The alien's eyes flickered, as if it already knew the crew's decision. There was no more mercy in its gaze, only a quiet acceptance. "Then you will face the consequences," it said, "and you will face them alone." With those final words, the alien began to fade, its form dissolving into the shadows from which it had emerged. The crew stood in stunned silence, the weight of the encounter still hanging over them. The ship's systems began to flicker back to life, but the message was clear: the Guardians were coming. And there was no turning back now. The Vanguard had unwittingly become the beacon for an unstoppable force, one that would bring them to the edge of destruction, and perhaps beyond. The USS Vanguard drifted silently through the eerie expanse of the alien graveyard, its crew on edge after the encounter with the mysterious being. Captain Cole stared out at the dark void before her, trying to make sense of the alien's warning. They had come too far to turn back now. The promise of discovering the secrets of an ancient civilization and understanding the weapon that had destroyed it was a lure they couldn't resist. But the reality of the situation was starting to settle in. There was no time left to unravel the mystery at their own pace. Suddenly, the calm was shattered by a loud, low hum, an unmistakable, ominous sound that seemed to resonate through the ship. The sensors blinked erratically, warning lights flashed, and the crew scrambled to their stations. Captain Cole gripped her chair tightly, her pulse quickening. "What is it, Lieutenant?" she demanded. Multiple contacts emerging from the graveyard. The officer at the sensor station replied, his voice strained. "They're massive." "Too massive." The screen flickered, then cleared, revealing a sight that made the crew's blood run cold. The first of the alien machines appeared in the distance, a colossal behemoth drifting toward them with terrifying precision. The machine was enormous, far larger than anything human technology could comprehend. Its form was a blend of organic and mechanical elements, an intimidating blend of sharp angles and smooth, curved surfaces. It was a relic of an ancient empire, built to defend the weapon at all costs. The crew's advanced radar and defense systems had detected no ships, no signs of life, nothing at all before now. The machines had been lying dormant, waiting for the beacon to call them, and now they were awake. Before Captain Cole could issue an order, another ship appeared, this one larger, its hull seemingly covered in impenetrable plating, glowing energy conduits pulsing beneath its surface. Then came another. And another. Soon, the space around the Vanguard was filled with these giant machines, each one powerful and imposing. They were not mere warships, they were guardians, programmed with a single purpose: to ensure the weapon never activated again. The crew watched in stunned silence as the first machine closed the distance between them. The commander's voice crackled over the intercom, barely able to hold back his panic. "They're not just ships. They're alive. Some kind of biomechanical life form." Captain Cole took a deep breath. She had faced countless dangers in her career, but this was unlike anything she had ever encountered. The Vanguard was no match for the sheer size and power of these machines. The weapons systems were ready, but would they even be able to make a dent in these behemoths? She had no choice but to trust her crew's training in the ship's technology. "Engage evasive maneuvers," she ordered firmly. "Get us out of here." The crew worked in perfect synchronization, their fingers flying over controls as the ship veered sharply. The Vanguard shot forward, engines roaring to life as they attempted to outmaneuver the massive Guardians. The space around them was filled with the eerie sound of distant, low rumbling, the engines of the alien machines activating as they pursued. It was like an ancient predator hunting its prey, and the Vanguard was the prey. In the distance, a massive blast of energy shot out from one of the alien ships, narrowly missing the Vanguard as it twisted and turned to avoid it. Captain Cole's grip tightened on the armrests, her focus laser sharp. She could see the ships closing in. The Vanguard was fast, but these machines were not meant to chase. This was their territory, their domain. The larger ships fired again, and this time, The Vanguard couldn't avoid the blast. The ship rocked violently, the bridge lights flickering, alarms blaring as the crew struggled to maintain control. The shields were barely holding. "We can't outrun them, Captain." Lieutenant Rodriguez, the ship's weapons officer, shouted over the chaos. "We need a plan." Captain Cole's mind raced. There was no time for hesitation. "We can't fight them head-on," she said, her voice cold with determination. "We need to buy time and figure out what these machines are guarding. There has to be something more to this place than just the weapon." Dr. Liara Jensen, still recovering from the previous encounter with the alien entity, spoke up from the science station, her voice urgent. "Captain, there's something strange about these machines. They don't just seem to be built to defend the weapon they're linked to it. If we can find a way to disrupt their connection to the artifact, we might be able to disable them." Captain Cole glanced at the view screen, watching as the machines closed in, preparing for another attack. Her mind worked quickly. Is there a way to access their central systems? Some kind of weakness we can exploit? Liara's fingers danced over the console, her eyes scanning data faster than humanly possible. The artifact itself is the key. These machines respond to its activation, they're bound to it. If we can locate a central control node within the graveyard, possibly in the remains of the alien empire's capital ship, we could disrupt their connection. Captain Cole didn't hesitate. "Set a course for that ship. We don't have much time." The Vanguard lurched forward, hurling deeper into the graveyard. The ancient skeletal ships of the alien empire loomed like forgotten giants, their hulls cracked and scorched by ages of neglect. But one ship stood out, a massive, hollowed-out structure, its shape jagged and intimidating. It was larger than anything they had seen before, its form unlike the others, perhaps the heart of the Empire itself. The crew rushed to their stations as the Vanguard sped toward it. The pursuing machines close behind. As the ship neared the alien structure, the Guardians' attacks intensified. One of the machines opened fire, the energy blast splintering the ship's shields. Another blast struck the Vanguard's aft, sending the ship tumbling uncontrollably. The crew scrambled to regain control, but the machines were relentless. "We're losing power," Lieutenant Rodriguez shouted. "The shields can't take another hit. We can't stop now." Captain Cole snapped. "We need to reach that ship, or we won't have a chance." The Vanguard shuddered again as another blast ripped through the hull. The alien machines were closing in, and time was running out. The crew knew that their only hope lay in understanding the weapon and finding its true purpose before they were consumed by the Guardians. They were no longer just escaping. They were now in a race against time, a race to uncover the truth of an ancient, destructive force before it could destroy them all. The USS Vanguard raced through the ancient alien graveyard, its hull battered and its systems failing as the crew desperately navigated toward the heart of the ruins. Behind them, the towering Guardians of the ancient empire followed relentlessly, their massive forms a constant threat. The crew had no time to waste. They had to find the weapon before the machines caught up with them. Captain Sarah Cole gripped the controls tightly, her mind focused on one goal: survival. But as they drew closer to the heart of the graveyard, the crew discovered something that changed everything. The weapon they had believed to be a force of pure destruction was not just a tool of annihilation. It was something far more powerful. It had the potential to recreate life, to revive entire civilizations that had been lost in the ancient war, including the humans who had inadvertently activated IT.AC. The Vanguard reached the epicenter of the alien ruins. The crew was shocked by what they found. A colossal, planet-sized structure lay hidden deep beneath the surface of the graveyard, its surface alive with pulsating energy. It was the source of the weapon's power, but there was more to it than anyone could have imagined. The structure was not just a weapon of mass destruction, it was an engine of rebirth. Its true purpose was not to end life, but to restore it. The machine had been designed to give life back to the galaxy, to resurrect civilizations that had been destroyed in the ancient war, and perhaps even to bring humanity back from the edge of extinction. The crew was torn. This revelation forced Captain Cole and her crew to make a choice. If they used the weapon, they could restore not just humanity, but countless other species an opportunity to reshape the galaxy for the better. But there was a problem. The alien remnants, the beings whose civilization had been destroyed by the weapon, had followed them to the heart of the graveyard. They appeared once again, their tall, shadowy figures manifesting before the crew. They were furious, their eyes glowing with ancient rage. The aliens had once created the weapon to be used in a desperate attempt to survive their own war, but now they saw the humans' discovery as a threat. The remnants were determined to prevent the weapon from being used, fearing that another species would make the same catastrophic mistakes they had made. "You do not understand the danger," the leader of the remnants warned, its voice filled with sorrow and authority. "The weapon must be destroyed. You are not ready to wield such power. We failed once. We paid the price. You will too, if you make the same mistake." Captain Cole's heart raced. The remnants' anger was justified. They had created this weapon as a last resort, and it had been the cause of their civilization's downfall. The temptation to use it was overwhelming, but Captain Cole knew the weight of that decision could have consequences beyond their comprehension. She had to choose: destroy the weapon and deny humanity its chance to rebuild, or use it and risk unleashing a force they might not be able to control. In that moment of intense pressure, Captain Cole did something unexpected. Instead of listening to the remnants' demands and destroying the weapon, she made a shocking choice. She decided to harness the weapon's power and strike a deal with the alien remnants. The galaxy, with all its ruined civilizations and destroyed worlds, needed healing. Humanity, despite its flaws, had the potential to rebuild what had been lost. By using the artifact, she could offer humanity the chance to restore life to the universe, to give the fallen civilizations a second chance. It was a risky move, but it was the only one that felt right. The remnants stood frozen, their ancient minds struggling to understand what they were hearing. Captain Cole looked them in the eye, her voice steady. "We will not make the same mistakes you did. We will use this power wisely to bring life back, not to destroy it. Humanity may be young, but we will not fail. This is our chance to rebuild, to be the stewards of the galaxy's history, not its executioners." For a long moment, the remnants did not speak. The silence in the air was suffocating. Finally, the leader of the remnants gave a nod, a reluctant acceptance. "If you fail, the galaxy will suffer. But if you succeed, you may be the ones to heal what we could not." Captain Cole felt a weight lift off her shoulders as she activated the artifact. A surge of energy filled the air, crackling and humming as it radiated out from the planet-sized structure. In an instant, the weapon's power spread across the galaxy, bringing life back to long-dead worlds. Entire civilizations, lost in the chaos of war, began to reawaken. Their cities, once nothing more than ruins, glowed with new energy as the stars above them flickered with the light of rebirth. The remnants, watching in silence, slowly retreated into the darkness of space. Their task was done. They had warned humanity, and now they would leave it to the humans to carry the burden of restoring the galaxy. Captain Cole stood at the bridge of the Vanguard, watching the stars shift as the universe began to heal. The crew was silent, their eyes wide with awe as they realized the true scope of what they had just done. Humanity had been given the chance to rewrite history, not as conquerors, but as caretakers. They were no longer just survivors of a dying galaxy. They were the architects of a new future. But with this power came uncertainty. The weapon had been unleashed, and its full potential was still unknown. The universe would watch as humanity took its first steps as the new guardians of cosmic history. The choices they made would determine the fate of countless civilizations, and the legacy of their actions would echo through the stars for millennia to come. The story of the USS Vanguard and its crew was far from over. What they had started would shape the galaxy in ways no one could predict. Humanity had a chance to rebuild from the ashes of an ancient war, but whether they would succeed or fall into the same traps as the civilizations before them was yet to be seen. The universe waited with bated breath as the future of the galaxy rested in their hands.